A deadly encounter captured in graphic detail.
Just broke the window.
2 officers responding to a 911 call reports of a man vandalizing cars.
He's looking into another car.
Overhead, a police helicopter, infrared video tracking the suspect. On the ground, shaky body cams pick up the frantic pursuit. As they close in amid the chaos, one of the officers shouts, "Gun!"
Show me your hands, gun!
Seconds later, both officers open fire.
Show me your hands, gun, gun! 5-7 shots fired, 7-8 down.
Leaving a haze of smoke and the 22-year-old suspect, Stephon Clark, dead in his grandmother's backyard, an iPhone, not a weapon, by his side.
My baby was shot so many times. He was shot. No.
The headlines came fast and furious. Social media ablaze. Unarmed black father of 2 is shot dead by cops. Police shot at a man 20 times in his own yard, thinking he had a gun. It was an iPhone. This latest incident adding to the already combustible national dialogue about police, race, and the use of deadly force.
When they fired their service weapons, they believed that this individual had a firearm.
But now, with the release of the police footage of the shooting, the case appears to have become far more complex. ABC News senior legal correspondent Sonny Hostin and I watched the footage together.
So it definitely looks like he's running here.
Here we are, another shooting of an unarmed young black man. A lot of people are going to look at this and be outraged. What's your take?
If this is a high crime area, these officers are already fearing for their lives. What I saw was officers that were scared, that were nervous, but were doing what officers do every single day, which is chase suspects and possibly put their lives on the line.
How is it that they could mistake a cell phone for a gun?
They did give him the opportunity to show his hands. We're talking about probably a dark object. It's dark outside. And what the law provides, Dan, is it doesn't have to be an actual threat. It doesn't have to be an actual gun. It only has to be that the police officer perceives the threat.
So when he yells, "Gun, gun, gun," that could be their strongest defense in a courtroom.
He perceived that it was a gun.
And that's all that matters.
Giving him the license to fire.
Once again, the law says as long as an officer reasonably believes he or she is in danger, deadly force is justifiable. But experts say just because the officers may have feared for their lives does not mean this situation was handled correctly.
Sorry, shots fired, shots fired.
Fear is not a calculation that officers should use as an excuse to shoot someone. To not let this person...
ABC News consultant and retired Dallas Police Chief David Brown knows all too well the risks officers face every day. In 2016, he lost 5 of his officers after they were ambushed by a heavily armed man who opened fire at a protest in Dallas.
When you have these multiple shots being fired, 20, 30 shots being fired at a subject, it leads one to believe there's an overreaction. The officers got too close, they didn't follow their training, and they failed to de-escalate the situation.
But we can't go over there and get you help unless we know you don't have the weapon.
Do you think these officers are going to find themselves in a court of law facing charges?
I don't think so. I'm just looking at this. The legal standard is whether or not the force was justified. I can't imagine that even an external investigation is going to determine that this shooting was unjustified. We need more training because this young man, a father of 2, shouldn't be dead. He had no weapon.
Stephon Clark was a father of 2 sons, ages 1 and 3.
And I have to wake up every morning to my kids asking me, "Where's Daddy? Let's go get Daddy." He would never want to leave his kids. He would always want to make sure his kids were good.
I understand that everybody has a job to do, but he didn't deserve this. He didn't deserve this.
He had allegedly been staying at his grandmother's home. Court records show he had 2 felony counts of domestic abuse to which he pled guilty and agreed to undergo treatment. He also had other charges, including robbery, possession of a firearm, and possession of a controlled substance.
These officers don't know the criminal record when they are on the scene. They know nothing. It only matters what the officers knew at the time when they are pursuing a suspect.
As to whether racism, either implicit or explicit, is at play in this case, it is not clear that officers knew at the time of the shooting that Clark was African American.
Is he black, white, Hispanic, Asian?
He had a hoodie on. I couldn't tell, man.
The fact that the young man was running,
Yeah.
does he not have potentially some justification in being afraid
Maybe
of
he's
the police?
afraid of the police.
So, I mean, that he was running doesn't necessarily mean he was guilty of anything.
No, it doesn't. And that's, I think, what's so difficult about the scene that we see over and over again. There are young black men that are just simply afraid of the police because you see the statistics of young black men being killed disproportionately from other people in the population.
What would you say to people of color who are afraid of the police?
I have a son who is 6 feet tall, a boy of color, and I tell him, listen, don't run from the police. I've taken my son to our neighborhood police station. I've introduced him to the police officers. So if they see him running down the street because he is an athlete, he may be training, I want them to know who he is. Now, does that sound unreasonable? To some, perhaps, but that is what I do to make sure that my son is not harmed by the police because of this implicit bias that exists.
The two officers who shot Clark have not been identified, but they have both had years of training, and they are both now on paid administrative leave.
You know, this is a very tragic situation, and, you know, for the family and for our officers as well.
Just broke the window, running south.
Sacramento police say the officers in the helicopter witnessed Clark break a glass door before they told units to move in. They also released a statement saying, in part, the officers gave the suspect commands to stop and show his hands. The suspect turned and advanced toward the officers while holding an object which was extended in front of him. The officers believed the suspect was pointing a firearm at them. Fearing for their safety, the officers fired their duty weapons, striking the suspect multiple times.
Let's step away from the details of this case for a moment. Where are we as a country now that we have this accumulation of cases like this?
We're in a place now where there is this fundamental distrust between the police and the communities they police. When you have the community that's being policed so afraid of possibly being killed by the neighborhood police officer, it's a recipe for disaster.
Black Lives Matter!
Tonight, as the police continue their investigation, yet another community in America reacts with shock and anger.
Shut it down!
If we don't get it!
Shut it down!
If we don't get it!
Shut it down!
As we said, a combustible national debate, and one we will continue to cover here on Nightline.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.